Everybody, thanks for watching and thanks for purchasing this DVD. It's a lot of information we got to get into in this DVD. This DVD is really going to be one of the most revealing DVDs I've done, in a while. We're really going to get into a big chunk of the overall message, which you'll understand, and really go further into what we talked about in Buddhism Part 2. We want to really get more deeper into that. But I want to thank you guys for taking the time to purchase the DVD or download the video, and support, what I've been doing for a while now. And I really appreciate the support from all of you guys around the world. I'm really appreciative of the support and the effort that people have really gone to basically show me that they really want to get this information and they really trying to understand, what I teach, what I'm talking about. So, it's cool that so many people are now starting to open up more and get this information and understand it. And as I said before, it's a hunger, not just in America, but around the world, for people to get this knowledge. A lot of people are coming into right knowledge and starting to understand and starting to see the clues and understand that there's something wrong with religion and wrong with what we have been told, and they have been doing their own research. So I want to applaud you guys and thank you guys for, choosing me to convey to you, my research and my teaching. So definitely appreciate it. But a lot of people in Buddhism Part 2, when they seen it, a lot of people, white people, was real skeptical about the information. A lot of people really didn't want to believe it. And as I said, it's tough. It's going to be hard for people to accept some of the information. And of course, you are told to do your own research. But I wanted to be a lot more clear in this video and to get people to really understand how important melanin is. I don't think people, black or white, really understands how important melanin is. So I really want you guys to really get that and really get what I'm talking about as far as reincarnation and the need of the black woman and coming back into a melanated body. I think by the end of this DVD, you'll be more convinced than ever, and you'll have a lot more, if anything, research to look into for yourself if you still don't believe. But this should be enough. We're really going to get into a lot of deep stuff and really go into some interesting topics, and you'll be able to really get the full picture of what I'm trying to convey. So, my many years of research now, really digging into this stuff and getting into all this information, it has led me to this point years ago, a long time ago. Everything I've been putting out now lately, it's stuff that I knew, 10 years ago, to tell you the truth. So this stuff is information you really have to grasp now, because we really got to go further than this. It's a lot more to all of this. It's not just, even though it'll seem, this is not the end all. It's a lot more information you have to grasp into connecting the dots and making it more understandable to you. For me, it's easy because, I've done the research so long. So I don't have that whole skepticism anymore. When I see things and I can back it up with facts and proof and it fits the overall, puzzle, I generally accept it, if I can prove it. But for a lot of people just are still skeptic about the information. And I can understand, as white people, as Europeans, you will be skeptic because, you guys have been conditioned, as I said before, you have been conditioned to see yourselves as gods. Jesus was in your image. They show you guys as superheroes, always the hero, always the person in power. You guys have been ruling the world basically for, hundreds of years now, thousands of years. So it's tough to see, for white people to see themselves in any other context than being superior. It's really tough for them to really grasp it because they feel like, this is something, if it's true, it's something that they think everybody would know about, or the information will be out there, but it is, and it's hidden. And we're going to get into a major hidden piece of it and reveal the true origin, the true, I should say, metaphysics of the Matrix, what it's really talking about in essence. And I think that's going to really, really open up a lot of doors, information-wise, for you as you watch it. So we're going to get into that at the end of the video. But in the meantime, I don't want anybody to think that I'm just saying this because I'm black. This is just bullshit information that I'm putting out. And I can understand how in Buddhism, somebody might have got that, kind of thought. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let you hear from a white man. I'm going to let a white man explain to you how important melanin is. It's not too many people who have done videos, white people have done videos on melanin to really express what it is and how important it is. If you have seen, it's a few videos up now. If you do the research, you'll see it's a lot of white people out there now speaking about melanin and its importance. Some of them will come straight out and say, hey, black people are the true, pure humans who are, was made correctly in the image of God or what have you. They are melanated, they were here first. And others will tiptoe around the whole topic, as this doctor will, I'm about to show you. But his research and his information that he has to talk about is really important, which is why we're going to really get into his information about melanin. And it's really interesting, and you guys definitely need to pay attention. Now, this Dr. Carl Marat, he doesn't make the mistake of mentioning black people having an abundance of melanin and how important that is for them and what we can do as far as us having an abundance of melanin. He doesn't make that mention of that, even though he'll speak about skin complexion. He is very careful to stay away from black people having so much melanin and not having any of the problems that he's going to mention in the video. Now, in the video, he's pushing chagas. And a lot of you probably know what chagas is. Chagas is a mushroom that basically has the same kind of capacities of melanin. It really can help people who do not have melanin, and it helps with a lot of things. So he's pushing chagas, and he's talking about the benefits of chagas and the benefits of having melanin and what it can do for the body and how you basically need melanin to move forward. So again, I don't want people to think that I'm just being arrogant as a black person, I'm Afrocentric or what have you. I don't want people to think I'm talking out my ass. I want you to hear it from a white man, and we're going to basically use this video to set the tone of this DVD, because we're going to get into a lot of stuff. But take a look.
Melanin's role is, in fact, even being rethought in medicine, that, is it really something that just absorbs sunlight, or does melanin have a role in the immune system in the body? And is it really more of an antimicrobial kind of defense against bacteria? Because melanin is found throughout all the animal and vegetable kingdom. And melanin is the very thing that you have in your hair and in your skin that gives you the color. Whether you're more red, whether you're more brown, whether you're tan, whether you're not, is because the melanin produced by your skin in the parts of the cell called melanocytes, or the pigment of your skin. And some people who have a condition called vitiligo, where their skin looks blotchy and they have white patches, they don't make this pigment. When you're exposed to ultraviolet radiation, you make more of it. Now, melanin is what gives chaga its dark color. That's what's so rich in this mushroom compared to the other mushrooms. And what they found in Russia, it protects genes and it actually repairs broken DNA. Isn't that wonderful? Something breaks down because you're exposed to chemicals or radiation. Think of the people of Japan right now in 2011 who are suffering from huge amounts of radiation. What could we do to help them repair their, prevent cancer developing? Well, you need a DNA repairer, and that's what melanin does. Just think what you can tell people who have families over there and so on. So this is a complex molecule. It's found in the brain. It's found in your adrenal glands. It's a powerful free radical scavenger. In other words, it helps the body prevent this oxidation, so it's an antioxidant. And I believe this is what makes chaga, among other things, one of the more special mushrooms that are out there.
Now, I'm going to jump in a couple times through this video to explain a couple things. First, let's see. He basically is expressing melanin and the benefits of melanin. And as I said, he fails to mention that Africans have an abundance of melanin. Now, he's talking to these people, who is probably a big room of white people, and explaining the benefits of melanin. Yet he lacks, and he fails to mention to these people that they lack in melanin severely. He fails to mention that they really need melanin and that they lack in melanin. He's given all the benefits. He's not going to mention the fact that Africans have an abundance of melanin and all of these benefits and everything that he's speaking about that melanin provides, we don't have to worry about that because we have the benefits because we are, melanated people. So he fails to put African people in that lane and showing that we are melanated and we don't have these problems. And yes, he says that, we all have melanin. It's responsible for our skin color, what have you. Yet again, he fails to tell these people that they have a huge lack of melanin, which is why he's pushing chagas. I mean, we all have melanin and melanin does all these beautiful things that he's talking about in the video. Why is he pushing chagas if they have melanin as well? So he does not mention the fact that, hey, you guys have next to no melanin, so you need chagas, you need to take these melatonin pills or what have you to get the benefits that I'm speaking about that melanin has. Black people do not need to do so, but he fails to mention this. I want to point that out so you can understand that he's being very careful about that. And a lot of people who do speak on melanin do so because they just can't talk about it. They don't want to talk about race. They don't want to get into it, and it's hard for them to admit that, Africans are, genetically superior, to Europeans. So we're going to get back into the video.
Now, just look at this. I hope you can read this, that 40% of the dry weight of chaga is, made up of these water extractable substances, and more than half, when you dry it, of that extract, which is 25% of the original material, is actually this coloring, this melanin. It's called a chromogenic complex. It's another name for it makes a dark color. It's a dark color complex, and 25% of this mushroom is made up out of this. It's its most distinctive feature. Now, and again, this is in that paper by Shashkina. That's on the website. You can learn about the chemical and medical biological properties of chaga, a review study translated out of Russian from 2006. And this paper basically says, there are these polyphenolic, chromogenic, human-like complexes present in chaga. In other words, it's the dark stuff. The dark stuff, the black, brown stuff in chaga, what makes everything look so dark, which just, put it on your skin and it looks a little darker, but somehow it improves in things, as we'll talk about in a minute. That's what's in chaga. And they studied this, Babatskaya studied this in 2002, studied this melanin complex, and says it protects the genes in your body. Now, I'm going to switch hats for a minute and talk. As some of you know, I'm also an engineer and a biomedical engineer, and I've designed equipment that we took to the top of Mount Everest and did the first scientific studies on top of Mount Everest to find out why people could live up there. A very rough environment because there's no oxygen there to breathe, and with no oxygen, your brain isn't very happy, and neither is all the cells in your body. So up there is less atmosphere, and there's an awful lot of light. And so I got really interested back in the 1980s when we did this kind of work with the University of California in San Diego, where I was doing a postdoctoral fellowship. I got really interested also in light. Now, the visible light in the electromagnetic spectrum is only a small part, and it's the colors from, the deep reds to the purples. But it's in this very narrow band. Below that there is infrared or warmth, infrared light or warmth, microwaves that we use for communication nowadays with our cell phones and Wi-Fi and so on. Radio waves are even longer. And then up here are what's ionizing radiation that breaks down things like ultraviolet light, which is faster in frequency, X-rays and gamma rays like we get from atomic reactors and so forth. So light is a very narrow part of the spectrum in what's called nanometers wavelength, 400 to 700 nanometers. Here's another way of seeing it. Here's the electromagnetic spectrum. Visible light that your eyes respond to and your skin responds to is a narrow part of the spectrum, here. Now, when you look at absorption curves in the test tube of melanin, this is what we're talking about. You can see in the blue part of the spectrum over here, the short wavelengths, which is higher energy, melanin has a lot of absorption, and it falls off a little bit, but it's in the same region that our body absorbs also light in forms of hemoglobin when you oxygenate your blood, It's also in that same region. And when you deoxygenate your blood, when the cells take the oxygen up, then you get the bluer blood, which is venous blood, and it's in the same region where melanin absorbs it. So, very broad absorption of energy. Picture. Okay? It absorbs light and warmth very, very effectively, and it modulates something in the body. And melanin, you can think of, is very analogous to the chlorophyll. That's the green stuff in plants. What makes the plants green? Chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is the same molecule as hemoglobin that's in your blood, except hemoglobin has iron in the center and chlorophyll has magnesium in the center. It's like liquid green blood. Okay? Now melanin has the same kind of ring structures and so on, and it makes very complex structures, and not all melanins are the same. As we'll talk about in a minute. In fact, there's somebody even studying that and wondering whether energy is directly absorbed from the melanin in your skin and transformed into energy in your body. Okay? And they even think about could in the future, and they're developing this now, they're taking melanin and making batteries out of them that store energy from the sunlight directly. It might, in fact, become a future source of how we're going to generate energy. Now, let's get back with that little bit of physics background. Let's talk about melanin inside chaga and melanin inside the body. So it absorbs thousands of times more electromagnetic radiation actually than chlorophyll does. And chlorophyll is what we need to make proteins and sugars, especially sugars in the body. It exists in many other tissues, as I mentioned. It's actually a very important molecule in any woman who's having a baby, because the fetus has all this melanin in it, as I'll show you. Okay? And it's thought to be, by some people, a master molecule that actually steers how the body communicates. For example, Frank Barr, a scientist, wrote a whole article, a whole issue of a journal called Medical Hypothesis, saying, you know, melanin is such a special molecule and it's found in the babies, it may have a major role in steering things in the body, in the whole regulatory system. Melanin's role in embryological organization, that's in the baby's organization, and tissue repair and tissue regeneration may be connected to the major role that it plays to balance the body, that's called homeostasis, in the autonomic, neuroendocrine, and immunological system. So in other words, melanin may play a much bigger role than just absorbing all this radiation, and when you get it into your body, it actually has a major effect on your immune system. Here's a picture of a baby at 35 days of pregnancy, and this is the eye of an embryo inside a mother. It's a very tiny little thing. Notice that the eye is pure melanin. That's an amazing picture, isn't it? To see all this melanin is inside, and when the embryo first forms, there is what's called the dark streak. It's all melanin.
So now, of course, we understand they don't give a damn if we have abortions. Think about all that melanin that they can take from the aborted fetuses. So, of course, you know, abortions is not going to be taken away. They can tiptoe around it and say, you know, it's moral reasons and it's, you know, issues with it. But really, they're not going to take away abortions because of those reasons and because, you know, they actually sell melanin and they extract melanin. So we understand the importance of it. And this is why, you know, they don't really give a damn about abortions. So imagine if they convey this information that he's given on melanin to people in school, to white people everywhere. This is something that a lot of people need to understand and know. Now, of course, you know, back in the day during slavery and after slavery, we have been constantly attacked about our genetic inferiorities to the Europeans, you know, because of their ignorance. They believed that they were superior. You know, we can go to Hitler and this whole race science thing that Aryans was somehow, you know, superior to everybody else. You have the KKK, you have white supremacists, the neo-Nazis or Nazis or what have you, who believe this, and they have this this feeling. They have this ideology based off their position in the world today, which is they are in the position of power, the European race. They really hold on to this ideology that because they are in this position, that they are somehow superior, not understanding that, Africans was easily defeated because we were a spiritual civilization, and we could never conceive doing such a thing on a grand scale as far as enslaving, people, white people or what have you, around the world for labor. So if they actually told people or taught this to a lot of people about melanin and how it really affects the body, then people will begin to see African people in a different light, and which is why they're not going to teach that, because they just can't come to grips with it, and they don't want to admit, the problems they have in the fact that Africans would be superior genetically to Europeans. So they're not really going to get into that, but we understand that they already know this. They've been stealing our organs, for a long time. Our organs is basically covered in melanin. They understand the benefits of it, as you just heard. And this is one of the reasons why, we have been seeing so many people have their organs stolen. And I don't think the movie 7 Pounds was a coincidence. We have a young black man, Will Smith, basically, killing himself and, giving away his organs. So I don't think that's a coincidence. They always put out movies as to a sign of things that they have been doing or are getting ready to do. So let's continue the video.
Okay, here's an example of a plant. It's an eggplant that has melanin in it, and a genetically changed one that is no melanin in it. Notice the size of the two difference. I mean, this is an indirect indication that melanin, directly can transduce energy in the vegetable kingdom. Now, the body is a living matrix, and you really want to get this, because this is kind of part of the operating system of your body. And I know that as we're talking about it, you really have to strain a little bit to stay with me, but I think it'll make some sense here. The body is actually a communication system where everything is connected to everything else, and it works through light. It works through light. It's called biophotons. And in this communication system, cells have connections to other cells called integrins, and electrons and light flows between cells. So it's like a supercomputer. Your body is like a supercomputer, and the skin is connected to every other part of the body. Kind of like a spider web, where everything, when you tug on one part of the spider web, it connects to everything else. And so these cells connect to the connective tissue, which the skin is part of, and it all works like semiconductors. Now, semiconductors, like computer chips, are made out of silicon. These are living semiconductors. Your body is made out of this complex supercomputer that figures everything out, and this is what energy medicine is all about. And when you put chemicals or drugs or lotions or pesticides or mercury from dental fillings that are leaking into your body, then this matrix gets upset. This matrix does not function. The energy doesn't communicate well. And this is where chaga is, I believe, very useful, because it helps you detoxify from all of this. Now, here's another form of radiation that's now in our environment. It's called, this is from 1990 to 2007. This is the exponential rise of cell phone use in the United States. This is the increase in 2000 to 2010 of radiation in the environment. This is what we're living in. Here's an example. I just brought one of my little, this is a meter that measures the microwave in this room that you're sitting in. Okay, this is measuring that. You can actually hear, the wireless. I can point it exactly where the most radiation is coming from. These are the communications. That is your Wi-Fi that's in this hotel. This is what people are living in nowadays. In this, we don't know it because you don't feel it, you don't have a sense for it. You need a machine, or in this case, a microwave detector, so you can see it. So I'm mentioning this is because we are changing as a species, and the kids are changing. Have you noticed how the kids are changing in school? They're not learning so well. They're living with their iPads and their iPods and their cordless telephones and everything else, and they're constantly being irradiated. Well, the studies are coming out of Sweden now is showing that after 10 years, exposure to cordless phones and cell phones, if you're under a teenager doing that, you have a 5-fold increase in brain tumors. Now, this is not being generally talked about, and I don't want to scare people. I just want to tell you what the studies are beginning to show, and it's highly controversial. But you need to do prevention about this because everybody's using these communicators, and if you read the fine print on them, it says, don't put closer to 1 inch next to your skin. Look, read your manual. It's a really fine point if you have an iPhone or, if it's a BlackBerry, it says 1 inch. So, this is microwave radiation, but it's modulated once, as you can hear, and that's what the body isn't happy about. So, because of this radiation, there is about now in cities between 100 to a 20,000-fold increase in background microwave radiation since 1980. Because we've put cell phone networks up, now we're putting up smart meters on people's houses in California. They're all using microwaves, and everybody says, well, they're not affecting anything. But we have shown studies, many scientific studies, that it causes DNA breakages, and the body generally repairs this DNA. But if you have chaga on your skin, I believe, or in your body, it helps repair these DNA breakages more. So just that reason alone, I think as prevention, it's a useful product to have. Does that make some sense to you? Yes. Yeah. Because you really, this is what we're living in, and we're kind of drowning in this microwave without even knowing it because we don't see it like light or we don't hear it like sound. We don't have a sense for it. And these things take a while. So melanin has a high antitoxic potential and helps enzymatic processes. It's a non-specific protective agent. It helps against mutation. It's capable of interacting with other chemicals called xenobiotics that cause oxidation, like heavy metals and other things. The body gets rid of them. It's one of the biggest things. And it has a photo and radioprotective activity. In fact, animals fed chaga, as I'll show you in a minute, live longer when you irradiate them with gamma rays, those really high-intensity rays that come from atomic bombs and from nuclear reactors. They live a lot longer when they take chaga. They've done studies in animals. Here, 305 days versus the control group died in 186 days. Now, I'm not suggesting any of us get exposed to gamma rays or whatever. Not healthy, But we're living in a world that's a little abnormal. It's not what your grandparents lived in and not even what your parents lived in.
So now, he said a whole lot about melanin. And a lot of that information and stuff a lot of us knew. A lot of it may be new to some of you, but it's very important information, and it gives you a clue that you really have to think deeply about as to the effects of melanin and how it's really needed in the body. So now, to get something out the way first, this is what you have to understand, what he didn't really put in the video, which I'll explain why he didn't. You have to understand first, there is no such thing as melanin. Plain and simple, there's no such thing as melanin. Melanin is a word created by Europeans to basically cover up carbon. Carbon-12. Carbon-12 is really melanin. I know a lot of you probably heard about this or know about it, but we're going to go into it a little deep here so you can really understand what this is really all about. So I know you probably say, well, what's all this stuff about melanin we just watched? Just basically replace melanin with carbon, and you have to understand why they came up with that. And I know you're going to ask yourself, why would Europeans come up with a word to basically replace carbon if melanin is actually carbon? Why would they want to hide that? And we're going to basically answer that question by, posing another question. And you have to think to yourself, wouldn't you think at some point in history, some point in time, Europeans did research to figure out what is it that make black people black? You have to think at some point they did that study, right? Of course they did. And when they did that study, they came to the fact that, one, they have a lot of problems themselves and they lack an abundance of melanin that is really important and essential to life, to being a human. And one of the reasons why they hid it, why they basically had to change the name to melanin, It's simple. It's because melanin is not an element. It's just that simple. Melanin is not an element essential to the existence of human life. Carbon-12 is. So if you say to people that, they lack an essential element to being a human being, to being, from the creator or from, the divine or what have you, when you start really getting into it scientifically, then people will really trace it back to something that they don't want them to trace it back to, which we'll get into. So thus they came up with the word melanin, which we'll talk more about that in a second. So now understand, I'm going to use melanin because you guys are more familiar with that word. And, when I say melanin, I'm talking about carbon-12. If I say carbon or carbon-12, I'm talking about melanin. So understand that. Now, they came up with melanin to hide the fact that melanin is carbon, which is an essential element. Plain and simple. You have 6 elements that make up the building blocks of life, or what they call the elements of life. You have hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen. You have carbon. You have phosphorus, and you have sulfur. These are basically the elements of life. And they understand when you start really digging into carbon, it's going to lead you back into some information they don't want you to really know about, which is going to lead you back to Kemet, and you're going to understand a whole wealth of knowledge, believe it or not, which we'll get into. So when you look at these elements, of course, you do not find melanin. So, what is melanin? But you do find the properties of melanin in carbon. So let's take a look at something called carbon black. So now we're going to see the same benefits in melanin we find in this carbon black. So now it says carbon black is a form of polycrystalline, which polycrystalline is like a liquid crystal, polycrystalline carbon that has a high surface area to volume ratio, albeit lower than that of activated carbon. Now it says down here, the most common use, 70% of carbon black, is as a pigment and reinforcing phase in automobile tires. Carbon black also helps conduct heat away from the tread and belt area of the tire, reducing thermal damage and increasing tire life. Carbon black particles are also employed in some radar absorbent materials used in the reduction of the radar cross section of aircraft and in photocopier and laser print toner and other inks and paints. The high tinting strength and stability of carbon black has also provided use in coloring of resins and films. About 20% of world production goes into belts, hoses, and other non-tire rubber goods. The balance is mainly used as a pigment in inks, coatings, and plastics. For example, it is added to polypropylene because it absorbs ultraviolet radiation, which otherwise causes the material to degrade. So we can see carbon black. Carbon has that same type of properties that melanin has as far as shielding from heat. They use carbon black to make the TV dinner trays as well. The ones microwave dinners you put in the microwave. But, they use it to keep, the tray from melting before your food gets cooked. So you can see they use carbon black in a lot of things. They use carbon black in the towels for the space shuttle they use on re-entry. So many different things you can find carbon black in, having those same properties as melanin, and it's something that a lot of people have no clue about. A lot of people don't even know about carbon black, but you can see how they go hand in hand. So of course, they want to basically cover up melanin, cover up carbon, cover up the fact that it's an essential element in life. And if you go out and you tell, white folks that they lack an essential element and creating life, then you will understand why they have so many problems, so many health issues. You will understand, one, that Africans are superior because they're genetically dominant, more superior than Europeans. And of course, this is something that they do not want people to figure out. Now, also, when they're doing this research, because we're basically talking about what they're going to find out when doing the research on what makes black people black. Understand this, grasp this. At some point, they had to do the research, and they did, of course. And in doing the research, they figured this out, and they figured out a whole lot more. So now, in doing their research on what makes black people black, they will find out, one, that it's carbon. It's carbon-12. Carbon-12 is essential to the building blocks of life, and African people have an abundance of it. So upon further research, they will find out that carbon has 15 isotopes. Of those 15 isotopes, 2 of those isotopes are stable. That's carbon-12, carbon-13. Now, carbon-12 makes up 98.93% of carbon. That's like most of the carbon. Carbon-12 is most of carbon. So they would ask themselves, well, damn, what is so special about carbon-12? How do you get carbon-12? And they will understand that you get carbon-12 through the triple alpha process, what they call the triple alpha process. Now, the triple alpha process involves 3 helium-4 nuclei. So you have 2 helium-4 nuclei that basically fuses, right? They fuse and they create barium-8. So you have 448. So 2 helium-4 nuclei fuse, you get barium-8. That barium-8 then fuses with another helium-4 nuclei and gives us carbon-12. So 8, 4, 12. So then carbon-12, we know carbon-12 is 6 electrons, 6 protons, 6 neutrons, which gives us carbon, which gives us man. So again, 666 in the Bible. I talked about this before. Boom. It goes back to carbon-12. This is major for them. It would blow their mind when they figured it out. And one of the main reasons why it would blow their mind is because they would know that the triple alpha process also can be found in the formation or the creation of stars. So it's like, well, damn, these people are a sun. And you can understand now, and you start taking this stuff back to Kemet. Damn, this is what the Egyptians was talking about. And there's so much more into this. But they will understand that it's something really special about African people. It's something special about these building blocks. And when you put all this stuff together, it really leads you to an unbelievable conclusion about the power of melanin that they lack. So now, as I talked about in the Saturn Satan series, when we got into the planets and everything, and I talked about, the solar system coming in existence due to a supernova, as science explains. I mean, think about that. So when you understand supernova is an explosion of stars, and I talked about how everything comes together and what have you. When you understand that, and then you look at the fact that, these elements, the building blocks, can be found completely 100% in African people, it would blow them away. And as I talked about before, you have consciousness creating energy creating elements, and those elements creating, physical matter, everything that we see, the planets or what have you. So they would look at this carbon-12, which they have to cover up and change the melanin, something different than carbon-12, this element. But they will look at it and see that, African people can be traced back to the creator, can be traced back to consciousness itself, this energy. It's crazy when you really start breaking it down. And this is what they would find out. Again, you got to ask yourself, how all this stuff get here? Where did all this stuff come from? And when you understand, again, consciousness creating energy creating these elements are the building blocks for everything that we see. So what basically scares them, and any scientist, any real scientist, or anybody who really studies, physics, who studies the universe, the stars, what have you, this is so easy for them to basically get, and it's tough because you have most of the scientists and physicists being white people. And for a lot of them, they would not come to this conclusion, and they most certainly probably wouldn't write about it and put it out there for people to criticize them on and call them traitors or racist or, anything or what have you. So this kind of information is just really known in, secret societies, and it's just not really put out there, for people to really just get easily. So you have to understand, one, if the universe, the creator, God, whatever you want to call it, if the universe manifested itself into a physical body, it would be the black woman. It's just that simple. They understand that. So now check this out. You have consciousness creating energy creating elements, those elements creating the physical material universe that we see. Black people are made of those elements. We are energetic beings. We have a consciousness. It's just that simple. So the consciousness of the universe, the consciousness of God or what have you, creating the energy, creating the elements and the physical material reality of this universe that we see today is the same as when a black woman gives birth to a child. So the black woman is basically a physical manifestation of God, the creator itself. So when you understand how the building blocks work and you start backtracking and putting this stuff together, this is the conclusion that they will have come to, and basically trying to figure out what makes us black. And they did this a long time ago, and they understand it. And when they understood it, things changed, plain and simple. So there's no way you can do the research. You can do that research on what makes black people black and not find this out. So what do they just say? Oh, it's melanin. It's a pigment. And notice what he's saying in the beginning of the video. He says, oh, well, is melanin just something that just makes our skin black, or is it more to melanin? You know, understand that, because that's what people have been told. Oh, no, it's just melanin. So think about it. They did the research. What makes black people black? What is it? And they found all of this out. So they just said, no, it's called melanin. It's this pigment stuff that just basically makes your skin black. That's all it is. But then here you have, again, a doctor, a white man, gives up all this information. And it changes the whole understanding and the whole thought process of what melanin is. Now, again, he didn't say it's carbon. He didn't say it's carbon-12. And you can admit that carbon-12 has the same benefits of melanin, as I just talked about. So if he is to say that, oh no, melanin is carbon-12, and, you know, it opens a whole door to so much more information that they obviously don't want people to know and to trace back to the creator, which is what we trace back to. So you got to understand, it's a lot more to all this. You know, you still have to be a highly educated being to put this together. This is something I know people want to say, well, how do we form? How do we become humans? I know people want to think about that, but this is something that does not happen by accident. We are too complex for that. So, you know, Khnum, molding man on the potter's wheel, is telling you that we were fashioned, that we were created. And you have to understand there's a lot more into that, which we'll get into down the road. So it's not like, you know, Big Bang form and the planets form, and then eventually we just formed out of nowhere. We were created by something, because it's too complex to just happen, you know, like that. You can really look at the physics of planets coming together, but us, totally different. So now when you start understanding all this stuff, when you start really getting into it, you come to the conclusion that, you know, black people, there is absolutely no reason why we shouldn't be able to manifest any physical material thing that we want with our consciousness, plain and simple, especially since our subconscious is tapped into the energy of the universe. And it is. This is why I always tell you we have to gain control of the subconscious, because it's tapped in. And this is why they do everything that they do. So we do not gain control of that. But it should be no reason why we shouldn't be able to tap into it. So you got to understand, when you start really thinking about the process and thinking about how all this stuff deals with consciousness or what have you, then, you know, you come to the conclusion that, well, consciousness is just, you know, something that is the most powerful thing that we can really break down to. Because if consciousness is creating this energy, and this energy is creating elements, and elements creating everything that we see, then consciousness must be the creator, must be God. So you have to really, you know, really get into this kind of information when you start studying energy. And this whole energy that I'm talking about, we tap into, is what they call the unified field. You probably heard of unified field theory, which I do not like to really dig into and talk about, because, you know, energy is infinite. It's everywhere. When you start trying to break this stuff down into little categories and stuff like that, you lose sight of what energy goes back to. Because, you know, we're talking about science here, and science basically deals with what they can prove. And really, when you get into it, you start tracing back this unified field, this energetic grid they want to talk about, then, you know, really it goes back to consciousness. And you have a bunch of people who can't really conceive consciousness and really understand, you know, consciousness. Because when you start talking about where did this energy come from, you get into the whole idea that, you know, something can't come from nothing. And this is what a lot of people always say, well, you can't have nothing come, you know, something come from nothing. There's nothing. And then how does something come out of that? What is that? And this is basically what energy does. Energy is coming from consciousness, and consciousness, so to speak, is like nothing. Consciousness can be considered God. When you read the Bible, when they say, the Christians, that God is everywhere, consciousness is everywhere. When they tell you, bow your head and pray to God or what have you, you're talking to consciousness. When you meditate, you are basically tapping into your consciousness. You are basically trying to develop your consciousness to basically, join together the masculine and feminine energy. So it's talking about consciousness when it's talking about so many different things that deal with religion. So Jesus, again, talking about going within yourself, meditating, consciousness. So these are things that it's tough for them to really grasp when it comes to this energy. So we got to understand a lot of the terms that they use, the scientific terms. If you notice me, I try to stay away from all that stuff. I try to really give it to you straight out. We can get into a lot of the technical stuff when it comes to all this stuff, but really, it's just basically what it is. You have consciousness creating energy, energy creating these elements, and then, these elements creating everything else. Now, if you really want to get into that process more, we can start thinking about sound and everything like that, and vibration and all that, as I talked about in Saturn and Satan series. All that stuff fits in. But really, to keep it basic, you have consciousness, you have energy, you have elements, you have everything else. So as they say, God is unseen. Consciousness is unseen. Consciousness created energy, and they just can't grasp that energy coming from nothing, which is why they really can't agree on unified field theory. And a lot of this, the findings and studies are, not accepted. There's a lot of issues with it. So a lot of the researchers just can't come together on unified field, which is why, it has all the problems. But now let's go back and let's get into ancient Kemet. Let's go back to ancient Kemet and let's just look at the creation story. So as I said, consciousness created energy or what have you. So you have Atum. Atum would basically be consciousness. Atum created Shu and Tefnut. So you have Shu, which would basically be energy. Tefnut, which would basically be the elements. So Shu and Tefnut, we get Nut, which would basically be the sky and, planets, the universe, or what have you, if you want to say that. And we have Geb, which would basically be, Jeb will be the earth. So you have consciousness, Atum, creating energy, Shu, and elements, which would be Tefnut. So consciousness, you have energy, you have elements, you have the creation of earth, and then you have Osiris and all the others, which would basically be aspects of nature and reality, which would be us, that exist. The sun is a major part of the whole thing, of course, because, an exploding sun is basically what created all this. So all this stuff comes together. So it's really easy to put it like that, as the Egyptians put it with the creation story, as you've seen how all this stuff comes together. Remember, out of nothing, Noon, in the waters of Noon, nothing, darkness, space, you have Atum. So Atum, consciousness. Remember, as I said before, consciousness needs existence in order for itself to exist. Consciousness needs something to perceive in order for it to exist, basically. So consciousness perceiving existence. And when it perceived existence, it became aware of itself. And then consciousness moved. And in moved, you have energy. And that takes energy to move. Any kind of movement you do is energy. So when you start going into all that, you can really start breaking down a lot of the creation stories from other civilizations as well that really go into basically what I'm talking about as far as consciousness creating energy, energy creating elements, these elements creating everything else. So again, the ancient Egyptians was on point. The Egyptians was on point with the information. They really understood what this stuff was about. And the reason why I break it down the way I do is because they break it down so easily for people to understand. So we talked about before how a lot of people don't want to count the, let's just say, the decipherment of the Egyptian hieroglyphics. And you just can't make this stuff up. The Greeks didn't know it. There's no way that they could really understand this information until, they was taught by the ancient Egyptians. But the Egyptians obviously clearly had this information. And when you look at the symbols, because this is what you really have to look at, we can go by what they say, the symbols say, letter wise or what have you. It don't always equal up. I like to read the symbols itself. I like to look at the actual symbols, and then you can start putting it together like a picture, like as far as what it's trying to say. But we can only speculate on some of the stuff. But when you start putting together the pictures and putting together information, and you start getting stuff like what I just said, it all start to make sense with actual science. So we got to think about all the civilizations that basically revere the sun and worship the sun or what have you, how they must have had this understanding about the sun and about, this whole process. So the sun, this is why they coupled the sun with Atum. So you have Atum, which I said is consciousness creating energy, elements, what have you. And they coupled them with the sun, Ra, Atum Ra, because the sun, again, exploding, that supernova creates everything too. So you have Atum Ra, you have consciousness and the sun being creators. So this is why, you have the whole thing with the sun and Atum Ra and everything else. And when you really start getting into Egyptian mythology and all the information, it just all adds up to things that we already found in science and physics. So this is stuff that it's like, when people talk this stuff about Kemet and start talking against it, what have you, it's proven. It's just no way around it. It boggles the mind when you understand how much they knew and how they metaphorically put it into these mythologies, and it all goes back and relates to math, science, physics, or what have you. It's an amazing thing. So now, of course, they had to come up with the word melanin to cover all this stuff up, because believe it or not, when they start doing their research, it all goes back to here. It's just no way around it. When you start digging, because that's what I did. I did the research myself, and I started digging, and it leads you there. So, they obviously, it took them somewhere where they didn't really want to go, and they don't want people to know, thus melanin. So now also, when you look up the etymology of the word melanin, you see it's Greek, of course, Greek. So melanin, goes back to Greek. It means black. And the more interesting thing about this is the word basically began in the mid-19th century. So we're talking about the mid-1800s. So you got to ask yourself, well, damn, that's recent. What was they calling it, before that? Did they know about melanin before that? Obviously they did, because they knew about carbon. Carbon goes back to the 18th century. We're talking about the 1700s. So they knew about carbon. So they understood this stuff. So again, we're talking about a fairly new word created by the Greeks. And we know if the Greeks created it, and it pertains to black, we know what they were trying to cover up. So melanin itself means black. It goes back to blackness. It goes back to carbon, blackness. And we can understand this stuff when you really start getting into it. Now, Denzel Washington's first movie, Carbon Copy. This movie came out in 1981. It's Denzel's first movie. Now, Carbon Copy, in this movie, you have Denzel Washington, black kid, basically going to his father, played by George Segal, a white man, and telling him, hey, I'm your son. So, carbon copy means an exact copy. So it's basically a play on words, because Denzel is clearly not an exact copy of George Segal, him being carbon or melanated. So I think that, one, you have to think they could have cast a more lighter person. I always thought about that in this movie when I watched it. It's a good movie. You have to think that, damn, it would be smarter for us to cast a light-skinned black guy, to make it more believable that this black kid is from this white guy. But no, they cast Denzel, and you can see he's clearly 100% black. No way he's mixed with anything. But I think that they did that to show that, melanin is carbon. And that, I think they wanted to show that, the stereotypes and things that black people of color go through because of their skin color. So, I wanted to point that out. But the movie was called Carbon Copy. And, and doing this research on, it just popped up in my head, carbon copy, carbon, black, melanin, about a black kid. It can't be a coincidence. So now, as I said, I really wanted to prove my point on what I talked about in Buddhism Part 2, so you can really understand. Now, believe it or not, I have basically proven my point about the esoteric occult understanding of God goes back to the African melanated people. It's just that simple, whether you choose to accept it or not. But I'm going to go further and prove my point. So we're going to go into the Bible. We're going to go into a couple more things. So now, remember, Dr. Karl Marat said this.
The body is actually a communication system where everything is connected to everything else, and it works through light. It works through light. It's called biophotons. And in this communication system, cells have connections to other cells called integrins, and electrons and light flows between cells. So it's like a supercomputer. Your body is like a supercomputer, and the skin is connected to every other part of the body.
So now let's go to Matthew 6:22. It says, "The light of the body is the eye. If therefore thy eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light." Clearly, it's talking about the third eye. So now understand, as Dr. Karl Marat said, melanin is a conductor of energy. It can concentrate energy and absorb light. That energy, that light, is you. So, during meditation, when you meditate, your consciousness is using the melanin to basically activate your chakras and to activate your spiritual light body, sending Kundalini energy up the spine to activate the pineal gland on the third eye. Now, the third eye, the pineal gland, is the only thing that can fully tap into your subconscious. And white people have a calcified pineal gland and next to no melanin. So understand, melanin is the driver of your Kundalini. Melanin is the driver of your spiritual vehicle. It is the pilot, the captain of your vessel. So without melanin, you have no way of getting the energy to the brain. You have no way of driving the energy up the spine and activating the third eye, which will give you access to the subconscious. So because of this, you have white people, Europeans, you are a slave to your subconscious. You are a slave to the lower brain. It's just that simple. So this is why they call, white people the devil, Europeans the devil, because you can only access that lower brain. You are driven by the lower brain. And because you can't get this Kundalini energies, Kundalini rising, this is all you know. So when you die, your energy only knows the material and not the spiritual. It's just that simple. So you need the melanin to get this energy. You need this Kundalini rising. You need to activate the third eye. All this stuff cannot be done without a driver. So you need the driver. So it's a known fact. Europeans have a 60 to 80% calcified pineal gland and next to no melanin. Now, this is not something that I'm saying to be evil or malicious or mean or something like that. This is a fact. This is why you have people like Dr. Karl Marat pushing chagas, and you have melatonin pills. So take the hint, take the facts, do the research. It's not somebody just being, Afrocentric or, spewing hate. This is somebody who's trying to help you and get you to understand what they do not want you to know. You need to grasp this. You need to understand, what's going on. So you have to get it. This is a fact. So when you get into energy transfer and you start understanding how this stuff works, and you have a lot of Europeans who do yoga, who meditate, what have you, because they have a sense for it. There is something embedded within them deeply that understands that they need to do this, which is why, when you start to get this understanding, you have a lot of Europeans that say, well, I need to get into yoga, I need to get into this. And you have a lot of Europeans who try to be spiritual, but they can't really grasp it, and it's so many signs that we see that this is the truth. I mean, it's one of those things that when you have melanin, it's attaching you more to the spiritual. People are more spiritual, which we know we were in Africa and still are, more spiritual than, material, which is why they gave us the Bible and used spirituality to control us, because they know we're full of melanin, we're full of spirituality. So you see a lot of symptoms in Europeans that show up to show that they don't have this spirituality. They don't have this sense of the spiritual. Like I was talking about before with, white people hunting and just killing animals for nothing. That's not even done in nature. When they hunt, they don't kill for nothing. It's not done. They kill for food. That's it. It's not for sport. So that's one thing we see that Europeans do. So a lot of people say, well, black people hunt too. Yeah, this is what we was taught from you. So remember that. But hunting is one thing. And just the overall disregard for human life. And it's not all of you, of course, but you got to understand what we say, that there is no empathy. It just shows up in so many different things. And it's not your fault 100% because you have been taught this hatred. You have been taught to basically go away from what you should be going towards. So when I watch shows like Barrett Jackson or Meekum, these car shows, the car auctions, I don't know if any of you guys ever watched, but you have a room full of rich white folks and they all white. I've never seen one black dude in there. Maybe once, possibly. He could have been black, I'm not sure. But usually full of white people. And they spend thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars on one car. A car that they just going to put in their collection and sit and look at. And his children starving all over the world. This is what I mean. Not having the empathy of the implications of that. And we can see with hip hop music how they try to get us to basically do these same things. You see black people buying Bentleys and spending all this money. And this is what we have been taught through this system, to basically try to, destroy what makes us spiritual. So we spend all this money on Jordans and stuff that we can't afford, and we not understand. They basically trying to change us into what they are, either to mask who they are or to make us who they are. And then they try to become who we are because we see they copy us. But you got to understand, the signs show up of a non-spiritual people. We're more spiritual. You have a lot more black people be going to church. A lot more black people was into it. And what really gets white people stimulated with the whole religious thing is not just the fact that Jesus is in their image, but it's a mental thing. It's just like, it's knowledge, information. They really go hard based on the information what has been taught for thousands of years. They go hard based on what they believe is proof and evidence of it, not in a spiritual sense, but in the sense of factual information, what they believe is true. And you have a lot of Europeans that just want to believe, well, Jesus was white. The Egyptians was white. We get this argument that they want to believe that it had to be white because we ruling, we on top, everything white, white, white. And they can't grasp this concept. They can't really grasp when you start really digging into this stuff, how, it really goes back to African people. So now and again, it's not hard when you actually start doing the research to understand about the pineal gland and understand about melanin when you really start digging into it. And again, it's a lot of people out there beginning to start talking about melanin because they start to understand they have been lied to, and it's a lot more to melanin than people understand. So again, I know a lot of people are in denial about this information. A lot of people just don't want to accept it. I got a lot of emails from people who just really couldn't grasp it and had a hard time. I was called Afrocentric. A lot of people was really upset about the information, but it's going to be a lot more clear in this video. You got to understand that the information is out there. They would not be making chagas or pushing chagas. This Dr. Carl Marat would be pushing it if this wasn't true. You wouldn't have melatonin pills if this wasn't true. It's true. It's information that's out there that you can figure out for yourself. So people are not just out there being Afrocentric, which I hate that word, and they're not out there trying to bash white people and make you look bad. It's a simple fact that your own white scientists are speaking about, and more researchers are doing research on, because there are a lot of benefits that melanin has. There's so many diseases and illnesses that white people just wouldn't get if they was black. It's just that simple. So melanin is important, and it's important for people to start knowing about it and its effects and understanding, more importantly, that African people have an abundance of it, and that we are the original man, and that you basically need us to figure out the problems with yourselves. And this is one of the things they don't want to do, because then you have to look at us in a different light. But back to the Bible, the whole body is, the eye is single, the whole body be full of light. The light of the body is the eye. What is it talking about? It's talking about the pineal gland, of course. Now, the pineal gland emits light. How many people knew that? The pineal gland actually emits light. So now, in talking about the pineal gland, I'm going to read here. It says, it is already known to release various chemicals into our body, including a derivative of the feel-good chemical serotonin called melatonin. This hormone affects the modulation of our waking and sleeping patterns, but also affects our sex drive according to the seasons. Viagra. Excuse me. Though scientists still admit that they still don't yet have a complete picture of the pineal gland's function. Of course they do. Bullshit. It is located in the hidden center of the brain. It is pine cone shaped and no bigger than a raisin. Incredibly, it is actually bioluminescent, so glows within the darkness of the brain as if lit by a tiny light bulb, and it has also been found to be sensitive to light. Interestingly enough, the anatomy of the gland actually consists of a lens, a cornea, and retina, just like our eyeballs. Also, according to scientist Dr. Graham Blackwell, a large number of small crystals have been found in the gland called calcite microcrystals. They bear a striking resemblance to the calcite crystals in the inner ear that have been shown to exhibit the qualities of an electric field known as piezoelectricity. If the pineal gland crystals exhibit the same qualities, then this would prove a means whereby an external electromagnetic field might directly influence the brain. And of course it does. So again, it's talking about, you have melanin. It's talking about the pineal gland. And as I said, melanin being the driver of the vehicle, this energy to affect the pineal gland. So of course, this energy can basically program the brain. We know it sends signals down the spine, and this is how we move or what have you. So this is stuff they already know. They have done the research, trust me, on the pineal gland. They understand the importance of it. They understand what it can do. They understand how melanin is essential to the pineal gland. So when you're giving up all this information and you're saying all these things, then you say, but, Europeans have a 60 to 80% calcified pineal gland. There's an issue, there's a problem. And a lot of people are not looking at that. And they're not saying straight out, African people, black people, well, they don't have this problem. They are genetically superior. Their babies develop faster. They are smarter. They are genetically stronger. Everything about them resembles the universe. And of course, this is not going to be said, but this is what people have to understand. This is what you have to know. And again, this is not information that was put out there for you to basically just get. And the reason why it's being put to you the way that it is secretly is because they don't want you to understand exactly what I was just saying. So now it's easy to see, the pineal gland having these crystals, inside of it. So when you understand the implications of how crystals affect light, how it can store light, this is huge when you think about the fact that we have this in the pineal gland, and he's telling you about the energy and light that our body produces and everything. So you can understand how these things can go hand in hand. So melanin is a huge part of all of this because, again, it is the driver that's going to get this energy and light to the pineal gland. And the pineal gland is going to get it to the subconscious to get you to start, activating it, to get you to start, bringing it together with your consciousness. So, it's a huge thing when you see that. Again, they're talking about in the article about, bioluminescence, the pineal gland actually lighting up. So this is one of the reasons why when they show the pictures of Jesus and, Krishna, what have you, they have that light, the sun behind their head. The pineal gland is the sun. This is one of the reasons why it has that. So you can see everything fits. I mean, it's just, there's no way. You got to get this. This is not bullshit. Everything fits. It all works. It's going to fit a lot more as we keep going. So this is what this is all about. But let's go back to the Garden of Eden. So then I love going to the Garden of Eden and getting into this stuff. So now, God basically didn't want us to get the tree of life and the tree of knowledge. If we did so, we'd become gods. So God didn't want that to happen. So now understand the tree of life, the tree of knowledge of good and evil, is basically your spinal column and your brain. It's just that simple. When you look at pictures, they look just like trees. So the tree of life, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, what have you, it's just your spinal column in your brain. So you have the tree of life, basically where your pine cone shaped pineal gland sits on. You have the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, where you have the reptilian lower brain, which is why the serpent is on a tree in the story, because it symbolized the reptilian lower brain sitting on the tree of your brain, which, looks like a tree. So this is what this stuff is all, getting into. So now your brain, or your pineal gland, I should say, sits in the middle of your brain, basically protected by the two cerebral hemispheres, which the Bible gives us the two cherubims that's basically protecting the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So you have the two cerebral hemispheres and the two cherubims. Same thing. So it's giving you the brain right there. You have the brain that's like a tree. You have the cherubims protecting it. And you have the tree of life. You have the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So metaphorically, if you really want to get into in the Garden of Eden, it's breaking down the brain. As I said, we fell because of the lower brain. So you have the lower brain sitting on the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. That lower reptilian brain would be the evil, or, bird brain, limbic system, prefrontal cortex, or what have you, would be the good. So you have good and evil basically on the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. You have basically the pineal gland being on the tree of life. And this is what God is protecting us from. So it's easy to see when you start breaking down the story metaphorically. What it's talking about is talking about the brain. So now Led Zeppelin, wrote a song called Stairway to Heaven. Everybody knows about this song. When you play it backwards, it's a song to Satan. Everybody heard about that. So why did they make that song? Stairway to Heaven is actually a Masonic saying. It's something that you learn about in the 33rd degree of Freemasonry. Now, the stairway to heaven is actually your spinal column. Plain and simple. Your spinal column has 33 vertebrae. 33 vertebrae leading up to, the brain. So again, we know Satan is on the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So you have these stairs leading up the spinal column, leading to the brain, or to the reptilian brain, to Satan. So thus you have the song to Satan when you spin it backwards. So you have, 33 vertebrae, you have 33rd degree of Freemasonry, you have 66 books of the Bible. And we know that King James was a Mason. They put together the Bible. They hid all that Masonic information within the Bible, which is why you have 66 books. Masonic, it's all Masonic. And we know Jesus, everything about him, deals with Freemasonry. Just that simple, as I did a video on. So it says in the song to Satan that he will give you 666. So you have 33 vertebrae, 3 and 3 is 6. 33 degrees of Freemasonry, 3 and 3 is 6. You have Jesus, who died at 33. You have 3 and 3 is 6. So he will give you 666. It's talking about all this stuff. When you start going back, if you got into this stuff, when I was studying Aleister Crowley, I was really into, and by the way, they wrote that song in Aleister Crowley's house. They bought his house and wrote that song in it. But when I was studying Crowley, I got into heavy metal hard, really started getting into the music because I wanted to really learn and listen to what they were saying. Ozzy and Led Zeppelin and, Queen. Queen got some crazy songs. And really start getting into the music because it's so much hidden in a lot of their music. And I really, if you can put up with it, I liked a lot of their music, to tell you the truth. But I really encourage people to listen to a lot of those songs and really start decoding, because it'll help you, in your brain, to get into your brain and you start thinking about stuff. You'll be doing research and that song will pop into your head, or something that they said. And you'll be like, that's what it's talking about. You can never have too much information, trust me. But there's so many different sayings, so many different phrases, so many different things that we can go into that's going to lead you to the understanding of melanin and the brain. It's going to lead you to the understanding of Kundalini energy and the understanding of how melanin is important to all of this. So when you have people like, Alice Cooper and Queen and all these white folks doing these songs who don't really understand what it's about, you got to understand, when a lot of these initiates come into Freemasonry, they have no clue. They just, I'm a Mason, what have you. You do not get this knowledge I'm giving you till you get to the 33rd degree and beyond. It's just that simple, because then if you got this kind of knowledge at that level, I mean, it changes a lot. It makes you really start to call into question a lot of things that, you're doing. And it's so many people who just have no clue about this stuff. And you can imagine how a person would think if they're white and they came into this knowledge that I'm going to give you here, or what we talked about at the end of Buddhism too, about how the melanated black person is needed and is essential to basically going to heaven, or to basically ascending to your purpose, in creation. So, when you start digging into Jesus and everything about Jesus, when you start digging into the people that surround him and things that surround him, you're going to find that it shows up a lot in math, physics, astrology, and of course Freemasonry, which Jesus is just surrounded with it. He's a Mason, he's a Mason, just that clear and simple when you start really getting into that information. So, it's really, really clear to see. Now, Jesus was crucified in Golgotha, which is the place of the skull. So we know Jesus is the son of the pineal gland. The place of the skull is where the pineal gland sits. All of it goes back to the pineal gland, goes back to melanin. It's all fitting there, plain and simple. Now you have Jacob's ladder. What is Jacob's ladder? It's the same as the stairway to heaven. It's your spinal column leading to the pineal gland, to the brain. So you have Jacob's ladder. You have Genesis 32:30. Jacob called the name of the place Pineal, for I have seen God face to face, and my life is preserved. Everything. I mean, it all fits. It's all going to lead you here. There's no way around it. There's no escaping it. What do you think all this stuff is for? And it's tough for people to get this kind of information, and it's a part of you that want to run from it. But then it's a part of you that is intrigued by it and wants to continue on. And you got to understand, they put so much out here in the world to try to make you comfortable with your normal life, with your normal self. I don't want no troubles. I don't want no problem. I want to keep my head down. I want to just go about my life. I don't want to deal with this shit. And a lot of people feel that way. And a lot of people, some people get depressed, watching my videos. And some people get, I had a lot of people, man, your videos is depressing. They make me sad. They make me have no hope. And how could you not have hope, man? How could you not get this? I know it's all scary. It's all weird information, but you got to get this stuff and understand that this is amazing, that you have the knowledge, that you're understanding this, that you're going to have the tools necessary to do and fulfill your purpose. This material stuff is shit. It's nothing. Come on. You can't keep it forever. You are going to die. It is inevitable. Plain and simple. So you got to grasp that and understand it and grow up, and not try to hold on to this physical material stuff, and understand that this stuff is just here for you to basically fulfill your purpose. It's just that simple. So everywhere you look, you're going to keep finding this stuff. You're going to start finding out that it all leads to the Bible. It all leads to Kemet. It all leads to you, black people. So this is basically going to bring me to, my final part of the DVD, which is going to be long, but it's going to be cool. It's going to be worth it. And this is where I really can prove my point, or one of the best things I can use to prove my point, because it's so many places that you don't understand that's telling you exactly what I'm saying. So as I said in the beginning of the DVD, beginning of the video, we're going to use the Matrix to basically prove this point. You're going to understand what it's really, truly talking about. It's so many people who put out videos on the Matrix. I know you've seen a lot. I talk about the Matrix a lot, but they don't have the clear understanding of what it's talking about. I think after you see what I'm going to show you, you'll understand that it's the truth, that it's clear. And it's a lot that it entails, but everything will piece together and it'll fit, and you'll get it. You'll start understanding that, damn, it's the truth. This is what it's talking about. So, this is going to be one of those things where, you're going to have to probably watch twice after we go through all of it and really get it. But you should be able to get it the first time. But it's a lot of information, but it's going to be cool. It's going to be really insightful, and it's really going to make a lot of sense. So now, as I said in the beginning, you guys have been spoiled. You're a Superman, you're a Batman, you're the X-Men. You're so many superheroes. There's so many things that you have that portray you in this positive, unbelievable light as being the superior being over everybody else. And the fact that Europeans are in power is another thing that just gives you this validity, and a lot of people are arrogant of that, and this ego that's going to keep people from really grasping this kind of information. And the only way you can really convey it to them is to do things like this and put it into things that can be proven and seen and stuff that they know about. So The Matrix is just one of those movies where everybody knows it's talking about hidden stuff and that it goes into a lot of things. But you got to understand, when I'm talking about, the Europeans needing to reincarnate back into a melanated body, you have to understand that esoterically in the occult, this is the sum of all that information. It's giving you that. This is what it's telling you. When you put it together, when you start getting into the information, the main thing, one of the biggest, deepest secrets that is hidden, that it's almost impossible to figure out. I'm not going to say I'm just super genius or what have you. It's right there in front of your face to tell you the truth. It's playing on your prejudice. It's playing on your, let's say your programming, the way you have been programmed. It's playing on you being spoiled and everything. It's playing on that so you don't come to this conclusion, as I talked about in part 2. But it's playing on all that. So, you have to understand that you have to come back into melanin in order to ascend. It's just that simple. Jesus tells you in John 3:33, take the hint. He tells you, except the man be born again, he cannot enter into the kingdom of God. Plain and simple. And by that born again, it's telling you, you must be born again of a black woman, of melanin. All the metaphysics of the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven, as I proved and showed you, and that scan the Bible and Christianity finally explained, equates to the womb of the black woman. So when you start putting everything together, it's telling you this is what it's talking about. Let's get into this thing. First off, we go to Matrix Revolutions, the last Matrix. Remember, Neo wakes up at the train station. And he wakes up and he goes over, he sees the little girl first, and he sees the man. He tells her, hey, leave that poor man alone. And he sees his wife. This is the biggest clue of the Matrix. This scene in the Matrix gives away the whole entire series. Plain and simple. He gives it all away right here. And of course, they would save it for the last movie. But this scene is where everything is, as I'm about to break down. So he goes over and the man explains who he is. And when I first heard it, it just blew me away when he talked. Comes right up to Neo. Hi, I'm Ramachandra. This is my wife, Kamala, our daughter, Seti. These are all Hindu gods. It's just that simple. So to me, I'm just blown away. Like, did he really just give it away like that? He kind of hit something, which we'll get into later. But just like that. So when you understand these Hindu gods, you can start really from the last Matrix Revolutions, from the third movie, you can start breaking down everything else. Everything starts to unravel when you start to understand what he's representing. Now remember, he comes over, he says, I'm Ramachandra, and we know Rama, which would be short for Ramachandra, he is dealing with reincarnation. Rama is more well known for incarnating as Krishna. He is the 7th incarnation of Vishnu. And everything about Rama deals with reincarnation. So that's one of the first things that blow you away. When you start looking into Ramachandra, into Rama, and understanding, he's the 7th avatar of Vishnu. He incarnated as Gautama Buddha, as Krishna. So it starts to get you, digging into things. So what was his job? What was the job of Ramachandra in the Matrix? He was the power plant systems manager for recycling. Think about that. So you have Ramachandra dealing with reincarnation into, different gods. You have this Ramachandra basically dealing with the same thing, reincarnation. So let's go back to the Matrix 1. So the power plant systems manager for recycling. Go back to Matrix 1, Cypher. Remember, when Cypher was having a meeting with Agent Smith, remember what he said. And I'm not going to be able to play the actual Matrix scenes, of course, because of copyright. And they've been on my ass. I know they're probably watching my shit. And I don't want them to find one little thing to be able to sue my ass over because I'm putting out this information. But I know the rules. I follow the rules. Other rules as well. And anything I do put in my videos, my DVDs, meets fair use. So it's all cool. So, yeah, but I can't put the Matrix in there. I wish I could. It would just stand out more. But you can go and Google these clips. Now, as I was saying, Cypher, when he's having the meeting with Agent Smith, when he's about to basically betray the rest of the guys, what does he say? He said, okay, I get my body back to the power plant. You reinsert me into the Matrix. So you understand that the power plant is where Neo woke up at, where all those bodies was. So you got to make sure you make that connection. And understand when it's talking about reincarnation, when he's talking about the power plant system manager for recycling, he's talking about recycling the bodies and the souls of the people. So Ramachandra is all about reincarnation. This is dealing with reincarnation. This is the first biggest clue about everything. Everything else is just going to fall into place. Now, also remember Morpheus explaining that the dead is fed intravenously to the living. So you have the recycling of the bodies to the living and the recycling of the energy or the soul into the new fetuses, the new babies that they was growing in those fields. So again, Ramachandra representing the reincarnation. You see it, it's clear. So now when we go and look at Rama, it's saying here, Rama is a Vedic Sanskrit word with two contextual meanings. In one context, as found in Atharva Veda, and Veda basically means knowledge. Atharva Veda basically means the process of everyday life. Atharva Veda states, Monir Williams, who was professor, it means dark colored black. So it's basically saying Rama, and Monir Williams, who was an expert in Sanskrit and expert in Hindu studies, he's saying that Rama means dark colored black, and is related to the term Ratri, which means night. In another context, as found in another Vedic text, the word means pleasing, delightful, charming, beautiful, lovely. So we have Ramachandra dealing with reincarnation. You know, take the hint. Ramachandra, reincarnation. When we look at Rama, it's dealing with black, it's dealing with dark or dark skin. Take the hint. So we go to Kamala, which Kamala is short for the Hindu god Kamala Mika. I ain't going to be saying that whole name the whole time. I'm about to say Kamala because it's Kamala for short. Now, Kamala is the Hindu god of creation and consciousness. Whenever you see her, she's always depicted with water and with a lotus. You know, a lotus is called a water lily. So you have Kamala, you have the lotus, you have Osiris, you have the lotus, you have a bunch of other Egyptian gods in the lotus. The lotus is a symbol for rebirth, plain and simple. So Kamala is dealing with rebirth, just like you have Ramachandra dealing with reincarnation, rebirth, reincarnation, same thing. It's giving you a hint here. It's telling you something. So when you understand the lotus, let's look up what the lotus symbol really means. It says here, the lotus symbol, the water lily. Discover the history and religious beliefs surrounding the lotus symbol, which was one of the most important religious Egyptian symbols in the mythology of ancient Egypt. The lotus is used as a symbol in ancient Egypt art, representing the sun of creation, rebirth, and was a symbol of Upper Egypt. As a symbol of the sun, it is closely associated with Atum Ra, the sun god, and later Nefertum, lotus god of perfume. Lotus flowers, also called water lilies, open in the morning and close again at night, symbolizing rebirth and regeneration. The lotus flower water lily was also used to symbolize the deceased upon entering the underworld and the process of rebirth, regeneration, and reincarnation. So now Kamala, what was her job? Her job was interactive systems manager, which basically is like the consciousness or the energy, the consciousness of the computer, you might as well say. So you have her job, her itself, the Hindu definition of Kamala, the Hindu god dealing with reincarnation, just like you have Ramachandra. I'm going to save Sati, the little girl, for later, for last, because there's a lot of stuff we got to get into in between to understand her. Because remember, as we don't see Ramachandra and Kamala, we know in Revolutions at the end, we see a couple more parts that you have Sati. It's a reason for that. So we'll explain her later. Now, Neo himself is an incarnation. He is the sixth incarnation of the One. He reincarnated, 6 times. Basically what it's telling you, as the architect points out to him. He's reincarnated. So it's symbolizing, it's telling you reincarnating over and over again. There you have that symbology as I explained to you. So Neo, of course, represents you, white people, among other things. So now, in order for Neo to walk the path of the One or to become the One, he needed the Oracle. So you have the Oracle. The Oracle sends him to, the architect. Everything that she was talking about in part 1 and then in part 2 and everything, Matrix Reloaded, was to get him to the source, which she said, you have to go to the source. That door of light, you've seen it in your dreams. What did you see when you walked through it? And he explained he's seen Trinity fall or what have you. So she leads him to the architect. Now, Seraph gives away who the Oracle and the architect is, which the Oracle is the black woman. Just that simple. She's black, but she represents the black woman, period. Now, Seraph gives away the architect as well as the Oracle as far as their relation and his relation. So you have the architect and the Oracle representing yin and yang. Now you have Seraph, who also represents yin yang, plain and simple. So Seraph gives it away because he's Asian. Remember, the key maker was Asian as well. The key maker was who Neo had to get to the architect. So both of those Asian guys gives away the yin and yang that is talking about with the architect and with the Oracle. Now remember, she said in Matrix Revolutions, the last Matrix, she was saying to Neo that his job is to balance the Matrix, and her job was to unbalance it. So you have the yin, which is negative female energy, and you have the yang, which is masculine male energy, and you have yin yang. This is what it's doing. His job is to balance. Her job is to unbalance. So it's giving you that. So when we're talking about yin yang, we know we're talking about Kundalini, which we'll get into. So we can see as you're going through these steps in the Matrix, it's breaking down. Everything that we've been talking about so far is giving you these things. And then wait to the end, but you can put some things together in the first and second Matrix. And it's giving you the pieces to bring you to this overall conclusion. So we see the yin-yang symbol being black and white. We see yin representing the black woman. She's black. The yin sign is black. And we see the architect representing yang. The symbol is white. He's white. No coincidence there. That is obviously clear right there. So you have the Oracle. You have the architect. And you got to understand the doors. What the doors are about. Neo, remember, through the Matrix, these doors he's going through. The doors represent Masonic initiations, which Neo was going through in the first and second Matrix, plain and simple. So when he walked through the door to get to the architect, was the 33rd degree, you might as well say. The architect is, of course, a Masonic saying. It's all about the grand architect of the universe, represented by the square and the compass. It's all Masonic. That is clear. That is easy. So in Masonic initiations, you actually walk through doors. You go through doors and you knock a certain amount of times. There's a lot of rituals and Masonic initiations and levels that deals with doors. It's just that simple. So that's another easy given that is giving away the Masonic connection. So you have in the first Matrix, Neo running, going through a door 303:33, take the hint, where he's shot and killed by Smith and he is reborn. Another major hint right there. So 33, take the hint. Everything is fitting into what we've been discussing so far is right there. So you start putting all the pieces together and everything starts to come a lot more clear. So now Neo, again, goes through the door, talks to the architect. This is symbolizing 33 degrees, 33rd degree, even though he became that when he walked through the door and got killed and was reborn. When you know about Masonic initiations and rituals, you know that happens in Freemasonry, where you lay in a casket, symbolizing death and rebirth. All that is done. So the Freemasonry symbology is right there, clear as day. So the architect basically tells him what I'm telling you. Tells him about him being the sixth version. Now, in the 33rd degree, as I discussed, you learn about the stairway to heaven, Jacob's ladder, what have you, the spinal column and all this stuff. So he's telling Neo that, you are the sixth version. You need to basically go back to the source, where you'll be allowed to select 23 people, 16 female, 7 male, to basically rebuild Zion. Now, the numbers give it away. So now remember, too, as well, the oracle tells Neo that he needs to return to the source, where the path of the one ends. The path of the one ends. So he goes to see the architect. This is where the path of the one is supposed to end. The architect tells him the same thing. You have to basically pick, 23 people, 16 female, 7 male to recreate, Zion or what have you. And the numbers is what's given away in the way he says it. He says 23, 16, 7 numbers. So we're talking about reincarnation. We're talking about people being born. You got to pick people. So the numbers give it away. You have 23. You have 16 and 7, which will give you 23. So you have 23, 23, which will give you 46. What does this mean? So we know we have 23 pairs of chromosomes. So 23 pairs give you 2 pairs of chromosomes, totaling 46 chromosomes. So 23, 16, 23, you have 23. You have 16 and 7, which is another 23. Basically telling you we're talking about chromosomes. We're talking about creating people. So in dealing with reincarnation, the source can only be one thing. What is the source? Where do we come from? We come from the woman. That is the source of us, of people. The source is the woman and is given away by this numerology. So the source is clearly a woman, based on the fact that you can't get any kind of people without the woman, period. So again, the key that gives it away is the chromosomes, the numbers, the 23 and 23. Now, what's so important about these chromosomes is when you also get to the 23rd chromosome, the 23rd chromosome is unique to who? The woman. The woman has XX chromosome. Men, we have the XY chromosome. So 23, that number is symbolic. It really alludes to the woman and singles her out when you understand it's dealing with the 46 chromosomes. So boom, you have woman being the source, which is clear, understandable. The source of us is the woman. And this is what we get into. So when you start digging into that thing, we know this is where it's going to lead us. So now you got to understand, again, source. So the source is the woman, but the source is specific to Neo. And as I said, Neo represents white people. So the source is specific to white people. So the source would be the white woman. And what he said, you go to the source and you basically pick these people, and a cycle is going to keep happening. You're going to keep reincarnating the cycle over and over again. It's metaphorically telling you that if you go back to the source, if you go back to the white woman, this is all that's going to happen. You're going to keep reincarnating over and over and repeating the cycle over and over again. So you got to understand the symbolic understanding of the source and what it's talking about and how important it is, because it has a lot to do with everything else. Now, he also tells Neo that if he doesn't go back to the source, it will be the end of his species. If he goes choose the other door and save Trinity, that will be the end of his species. So saying that if you don't go back to the white woman and we keep reincarnating over and over again, keep making white people, you choose the other door, that will be the end of your species, end of the white race. So go back and keep reincarnating and making these people. So we got to understand what it's saying here. It all makes sense. It all fits, and you'll see more, as we keep going. But this is what it's talking about. Now, the architect calls Neo an anomaly, and an anomaly is something that deviates from its expected path. And white people, sorry to say, that's basically what you are, an anomaly. You deviated from the expected path genetically. So you are a mutation of African people. A mutation is basically an anomaly, something that deviates from its expected path. So that's basically what you are. So it's giving you the hints, clear as day, as I was saying. So the architect represents, as I said, the Masons, the Masonic government that's basically trying to balance the anomaly instead of fixing it. So you have this government system that they understand what's going on. The Masons, they understand, as I said, they understand what's going on with you guys. But instead of them fixing it and coming back to melanin, they're trying to balance the situation. Oh, we're just going to rule and take over. So you got to understand, in the Matrix movie, the architect representing, the government, representing Masons, the architect in the movie, they created the program called the One. They created the program called the One. Neo has powers. Neo is looked at as a god. He can fly. And they made this program to convince Neo that his purpose is basically to save Zion. And to save Zion, he has to keep reincarnating. That's what he has to do. So when he came to the architect, remember, this is where the path of the One is supposed to end. He was supposed, like the other 5 Neos before him, he was supposed to pick reincarnation, save Zion, to go head back and, do the thing all over again, but he didn't. So you got to understand, they did all this stuff, to basically get him to keep reincarnating. And it's basically the same with white people. Neo was given powers. You basically have powers. You have white privilege. You have privilege. You have been put on this high pedestal. You are in positions of power. They have made you to hate black people. They have made you to be racist. They have made you superheroes. They have made God in the image of you. People bow down to an image that's a white person. This is what this government system has done instead of trying to correct the problem of the mutation that happened. Plain and simple. This is what they've done. Same as the architect. This is what they're trying to tell you. This is how they're breaking it down. So it's the same thing. Now, Agent Smith. Smith also represents white people, represents you. He represents control, chaos, the lies, the deception, the deceit, the feeling of no purpose. Because this is the thing that you're going to find out as white people. What is the purpose? When you find out, one, that Jesus is a lie. This God is not real. The Trinity is bullshit. This God that was made in your image is not real. What is your purpose? When you understand that, you have no purpose. Because when you understand that, you are not going to have the understanding that your purpose is to get back into melanation, to be remelanated. You're not going to understand that. So you have no purpose. Your purpose is just to keep reincarnating. So Smith represents all of that. He also represents the inevitability of death and the end of the world. And that if you keep reincarnating, you will not fulfill your true purpose. Plain and simple, you'll keep reincarnating over and over again. So if you keep reincarnating over and over again, you're just fighting against yourself. Plain and simple, symbolized by, Smith and Neo fighting. Because it's all you're doing is fighting with yourself until you finally understand with yourself or selves that you need melanin. You need to come back. You need to reincarnate. But this is what Smith symbolizes. He symbolizes this cycle. He symbolizes so much. You need to break that cycle of reincarnation. So the Oracle tells Neo that she wants what he wants, but the only way we can get it is together. Big hint. So at the end, when he's fighting Smith, when Neo and Smith is fighting at the end of Matrix Revolution, she says, through Smith, everything that has a beginning has an end. Neo basically trying to get him to understand that he needs to break the cycle. Everything that has a beginning has an end. This cycle does not. It's a cycle. You need to break break the cycle. Now, understand where that phrase comes from. Everything that has a beginning has an end. You got a lot of people who thought it came from Buddha. It's not from Buddha. It's actually from an old book called Immortality. The principal philosophic arguments for and against it. So the book is called Immortality. It's an old book, early 1900s. And it's ironic that a book called Immortality has a phrase that says everything that has a beginning has an end. So this is where the phrase comes from. So she's reminding him that he basically needs to, to end this. So, he allows Smith to basically, absorb him, assimilate him, and he combines with the Oracle and everything else to basically defeat Smith. So now the Oracle, in Matrix Revolution, another major key to everything, as you already know. So now the Oracle already know what's going to happen, plain and simple. The only thing she doesn't know is what's going to happen past her decision to allow Smith to assimilate her. Because as she said, we don't know. We can't see past the choices we don't understand. Now, to a program, a computer, letting something destroy you is just like beyond comprehension. So she can't understand why she would do this. So she can't see past the point when Smith assimilates her because it's something that she shouldn't do. But as she said at the end, she had faith. She had hope. And she also doesn't know what Neo is going to do. Is Neo truly going to follow the path? Is Neo really going to understand what it takes to understand what's going on and do what's needed to basically beat Smith? So she knows everything else up until that point. So remember at the end when Seraph asked her, did you always know? She said she didn't always know, but, she had hope. She had faith or whatever. So remember, Oracle was smart. She had a plan. So remember when Smith comes into the kitchen and, he basically says, if you knew I was coming, if you're an Oracle, why are you sitting there? That means you deliberately made these cookies, and everything like that, because he's like, what's going on? No way is this easy for her to come. And she just says, do what you're here to do, because it's a trap, of course. So she allows him to assimilate her, but she knows already that he assimilated Sati and he assimilated Seraph, which was part of the plan. Why was this a part of the plan? Because one, as I said, who does Seraph represent? He represents yin yang. Seraph, remember, why? I mean, he did things in this movie for a reason. Why would they show Sati going off with Seraph? Seraph gives it away as he gives away the Oracle yin-yang connection with the architect. Seraph, he gives away who Sati really is. As I said, I'll save her for later. So he gives away who she is. So Seraph being yin-yang, masculine and feminine energy. So yeah, Seraph basically gives it away. He gives it away. So you have Sati, who is basically Shakti. Sati and Shakti are both consorts of Shiva. Plain and simple. The Hindu god Shiva. So again, we go back into Hinduism, as I talked about in Buddhism. All this stuff ties into each other. So the Shakti, the Hindu goddess, she is dealing with the primordial cosmic energy. She deals with Kundalini rising. So this is why Seraph gives her away, because Seraph, yin yang, which basically is going to help you with Kundalini rising. They go hand in hand. And masculine and feminine energy, Kundalini rising, same thing. So the Oracle understanding, you have Kundalini energy, you have yin yang, the balance. All that's left is the black woman. He absorbs her. He basically assimilates her. You have all the building blocks to give basically the white man melanin, to get him what he needs to get this energy to the pineal gland. All that's left is for him to make a choice. Plain and simple. So Neo, everything has a beginning, has an end. Neo, break the cycle. So when he allows Smith to basically assimilate him, he goes in with the Oracle, the black woman, yin yang, masculine and feminine energy, Kundalini rising, all in one. Boom. Melanin explosion. You might as well say light. Boom. Destroy Smith. Everything is fine. Basically what it's coming down to. I'll take my bow now. That was a mouthful. But that's basically what it's telling you. That's basically what it's talking about. Everything fits. So now also remember, what did Sati do at the end? Remember, she made the sun come up. And she said, it's for Neo. Now, and they said, yeah, will we see him again? And she said, I suspect so. Why? He's being reborn. The sun rising symbolizes rebirth, but also Kundalini rising. She said it's for Neo because now Neo has the sun. He has the pineal gland. He was reborn. Also, remember when Trinity and Neo is basically going to the machine city and they go up above the clouds. What do they see? The sun. Beautiful sun. Symbolism here. What happens after that? Trinity dies. She dies. The whole ship comes down. Boom. It's over. Symbolic. It's all symbolic. And I hate to say it like this, but it's symbolic to the white man saying, in order for you to get the sun, true God, Kundalini rising, all that, you got to get rid of the white woman. Plain and simple. It is also saying, when you look at Trinity, she loved Neo, but she followed him to her death. And that's what it's saying. If you keep following this white man, he is blind. Neo was blinded by who? Bane. Bane, the bane of his existence. White man, who was Smith. The bane of your existence is this white flesh, this white man. That's the bane of your existence. You have to get rid of it. So to white women, the same thing. You keep following this blind white man, he's going to lead you to your death. And I ain't trying to be nasty or nothing like that or be funny, but I don't think it's a coincidence that she was penetrated by steel rods, black steel rods. So I ain't trying to be funny, but they crazy for doing that. But this is what they're trying to say. This is what they're trying to say. So you got to understand, the true savior is us. Plain and simple. Masculine, feminine energy. Kundalini rising. Melanin. You need to be reborn into a melanated person. Understand everything that it's giving you. It's giving you all the hints. It's talking about everything. So when you look at the Matrix, when you look at the movie, Neo was helped by black people. Plain and simple. It wasn't for the Oracle, black. Look at everybody. Look at the cast. You have Morpheus, Neo. We have Morpheus. You have the Oracle, black. You have, if you remember from the first, Tank and Dozer, black. All these black people is trying to give you the hint that you need these black people to help you. But also it's giving the hint of unity. That together we need to do this. We need to make this happen because it's for a better good, for, common good. And I know it's going to be a lot of black people that say, well, why should we help them? Why should we help these people? Because they need to come to this understanding, because believe it or not, when this happens, and I don't like to get into all this talk, a lot of people will talk about, the earth jumping to the fifth dimension and everything like that. To me, the end of the world is the end of the world. A lot of people are going to die. A lot of people are going to reincarnate, and a lot of them will be black. You have to understand that, because they are not getting this information. They ain't treating their bodies right, and they will not be able to make the shift from the third dimension to the fourth dimension. To the fifth dimension. It's just that simple. So black people are going to get stuck here, and white people need to get this into their consciousness and either do what's right and reincarnate, get melanin back in them, or get this knowledge in them. So eventually, when they do come back to whatever is here, they have some kind of knowledge. And because, this knowledge is going to need to exist. They're going to need to be able to tap into it and recall it, because you might get stuck because you're bullshitting. A lot of people might get stuck. You have to get this. I know it sounds crazy. A lot of people still don't want to believe it after all the proof. A lot of people think it's a joke. But to me, I don't really get into all that, because the end of the world is the end of the world. It don't matter how it happened. It's going to happen. What I'm giving you is the knowledge you need to get the tools you need to go to where you're supposed to go, to fulfill your purpose. Plain and simple. Because the shit is going to happen. It's inevitable. Plain and simple. Whether you believe it or not. You can look at the reports about the sun and everything like that. And, people talking about a host of crazy stuff. It doesn't matter. The end of the world is going to happen. And the dimensional shift and the evolution, the elevation, I should say, of the consciousness of the earth. If you can't grasp that on how it'll go from a conscious to a physical, Yeah, you're just not going to get it. But you need to do what you need to do. You need to get this knowledge in you. You need to have it so, as they say, when you die, your life flashed before your eyes. And a lot of people in esoteric circles will say that is your soul accessing what they call the Akashic records or whatever. And in those records, which basically be everything you know, but when you go on, your life flashing before your eyes, this knowledge needs to pop up. And it needs to be a connection, which result in, explosion of knowledge, which will give, you that power, the one. You will be knowing, you will know, this is, I don't need to reincarnate. I don't want to reincarnate. Let's not go back here. So it's a lot that's going to happen. It's a lot that's going to go on. A lot of people need to understand this. And you got to understand, when people was doing their research, when Crowley, if we start reading about the end towards Crowley's life, he found this out. He knew it was a certain point he couldn't go beyond because he wasn't black. And he started drinking and just was, indulging in lower brain stuff. Sex, drugs, rock and roll. Sex, drugs, and crazy stuff. I'm going to say rock and roll. I don't think it was out yet when he died. But sex and drugs was his thing. Plain and simple. And he just got drunk. And he was wasted most of the time. And because he couldn't go no further. He couldn't do nothing. Crowley was done. And a lot of people, when you get to this point, when you start getting this knowledge, then, you understand what you need to do. And I said, De Niro, George Lucas, it's not a coincidence they got black women, because they got it. They are high-ranking Masons. They are past 33rd degree. They understand. They get it. It's not a coincidence. So you're going to start to see, that theme. The movie Get Out, when you really break it down and get into it. I mean, they wanted these black bodies because they understood that the black bodies were superior. They was bitten on them and all kinds of weird stuff. Big hint right there. Now, that movie is kind of sort of designed to kind of create separation. Even though some people will get the esoteric knowledge behind it, some people will look at it and say, fuck these white people, racist. See these white people, they racist. And some white people are going to say, I don't want no nigger body. Y'all crazy. They're getting shot and killed by cops. I don't want that. It creates this negative stereotype. It creates separation. It is what it is. All the movies coming out with, all this 12 Years a Slave and, NWA and all these movies is just pound on racism. Separation. Because in separation, you will not come to this conclusion that I just gave you. You will not come into this knowledge because you're constantly hating each other. Hate. The reason why Neo went back into the Matrix, why he chose the other door, is because love. He loved Trinity. And that's the hint it's trying to give you. The reason why you got to come together and do this is because of love. Love conquers all. He basically sacrificed everything because he loved that woman, even though she died, but symbolism in that. But that was the reason. Plain and simple. So, that's the hint there, man. You got to really, a lot of people just really fake themselves out, and they just really get into stupid, weird shit based on, what they've been programmed with. And it's crazy. You got to break out that program and understand what it's designed for. And it's one of those things, like, I know how serious this stuff is. And I know you guys, a lot of people still going to be skeptical about it, but I tried to convey this information to you the best way that I could and get you to understand and really grasp this information. And again, watch this again. Understand, you got to do research. You got to really look into it. And I hope that a lot of people really get this message and understand what it's talking about. This is basically a major part of what I'm talking about, what my message is about. As everybody know, I'm about unity. I'm not doing this, because I hate white people or because because I'm mad, or I'm saying this stuff because I'm jealous or anything like that, or because I'm Afrocentric. I'm not saying all this stuff because I have a white wife or a white girlfriend or anything like that. I'm not saying this stuff because I just want to say it. It's facts. It's proven stuff. Plain and simple. I'm not saying this stuff just for nothing. No, I don't hate white people. I have a lot of white friends. No, I do not have a white girlfriend or a white wife. I just have white friends. I have white people who I know and care about, who I conveyed this information to, who accepted it. Long time ago, actually. So they really get it. They really understand. It's not something that you can just easily do because of the way our society is set up. It is looked down upon to have a mixed relationship. It's looked down upon to be pro-black if you're white. It's looked down upon to be pro-white if you're black. Everything they put out there in this system is designed to separate us, so we don't understand what I just told you. And, it's going to be up to people to really do their own research and get this information and get it into them and accept it and understand what this stuff is all about and how they really need melanin and how they really need to get this knowledge in order to continue. So this was my video. This DVD was important. It's a big chunk, again, of what's going on. And I got a lot more coming. As I said, I'm going to Kemet, going to visit Egypt in a couple weeks. I'll be there. I'll live stream from there. You guys who made it to the end of the DVD, definitely comment on Instagram about the video, what you thought, what have you. Comment on Facebook, or comment on YouTube as well. Leave some comments. Let me know what you guys think, and if you really understand what I'm saying, because a lot of people just not gonna get it. This shit gonna go over a lot of people's head, and they're gonna be thinking a bunch of stupid shit instead of paying attention to exactly what I said, because I can't lay it down any more clear than that. So yeah, I want to thank you guys for taking the time to watch, for purchasing and supporting. I really appreciate it. And I have a lot more to come. I'm really going to go hard and getting these videos back on YouTube as I used to. I just didn't have time. In the process of moving again, in the process of doing a lot of things. So I'm kind of backed up, and I wanted to get this out. And because I know a lot of people was hung up at the end of Buddhism too. And this one is definitely going to connect the dots for those who didn't really get it. So this had to come out, and a lot more to come. But yeah, thank you guys for taking the time to watch. See you guys next video.